everybody. It's time for the weekly news recap for the 1st to the 7th July 2024. So, this week Capcom had a quick showcase. They were kind of focusing on 3 different games. Well, the main one they were focusing on was the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, or DRDR. So we have a release date for it now. It's September 19th. It's going to be $50, 50 equivalent of your currency. That's a bit expensive for a remaster. It's not a remake. You know, you might get away with it for a remake. For a remaster, that's a bit much. Even if it is a deluxe remaster, whatever that's supposed to mean. There is in fact a digital deluxe edition of the deluxe remaster, fuck's sake. So Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster Deluxe Edition, of course. Yeah, okay, cool. Capcom, never change. Please change, actually. But anyway, a bunch of shit you can get for the deluxe edition are like costume packs, background music. There's some pre-order stuff as well. Rather annoyingly, there's one of the pre-order things is a skin for Frank that is the original character. Because a lot of people aren't a big fan of his new design. His new design feels like it's a bit old for Frank West. It was kind of, at least with the original game, it was kind of felt that Frank West was quite young. He's a bit brash. He's a bit arrogant, a bit cocky kind of thing. And the events of Dead Rising are meant to humble him a little bit. Whereas this time around, the design they have for him now is a lot older. It kind of feels like you should really know better at this point. I don't know. I think it kind of changes his character a bit too much. Anyway, that's what they're going with. And then there's a bunch of information about it there. But September 19th this year, 2024. Other news coming out of the Capcom story case. I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess is out pretty soon. There is a free demo available now. Your progress will carry over. There's also an Okami collaboration going on with it at the same time. Not sure how I feel about that. I'm like, great, Okami has been mentioned. Excellent. But also, where's that Okami 2 at? When are we getting that? Anyway. I've seen a couple of streams of the demo. A couple of videos, really, not actually streams. It seems fine. I don't know about this time limit business. So the demo itself doesn't have a time limit. That's what that quote is. But the game itself has a kind of time-based function to it, and like during the day, you're prepping the village for defense. As night comes along, then you have to do the defense. So it's a little tower defense, kind of, but not really. The towers are people, I suppose. This is the way to look at it. Maybe it's more like an Ark Knights kind of thing. You know, there's a wave of enemies. They come out of the gate at night. You need to position your villagers in such a way that you can deal with those enemies, and then your character can also move about in a kind of typical action combat type thing. I don't know. I need to play the demo myself. I just haven't got around to it yet. But you can, if you want. It's free now on everything except Switch. Check that out. I think it's on Steam if you're going to do it on PC. And then not at the Capcom showcase, but mentioned during this week, during the Capcom's stuff, Exoprimal's season content is ending, which effectively means the live service itself is probably going to be looking to wind down soon. So it's almost a year, like almost precisely a year since Exoprimal launched. They're not going to be putting out any new seasonal content anyway. Potentially they'll put out, just packs every now and then for costumes or cosmetics or what have you. But any kind of seasonal stuff, any kind of, big grand changes to the game, I think are probably done. So from now on, once the current season ends, they're just going to cycle previous seasons. So previous monthly content for the game will return monthly, as it does with monthly content. Starting with Season 1, which returns next week. Okay. So starting from then, effectively everything cycles. I'm kind of okay with that, to be honest. I'm kind of okay with there just being, 4 seasons, 8 seasons, whatever it is. A limited number of them, anyway, and just rotate them. At least that way you never miss anything. You just gotta wait. It'll be back around again. You'll get another shot at it. Instead of the kind of thing that happens with like Fortnite, like just stuff goes into the vault, or now you need to pay an exorbitant amount of money to get something that you weren't even aware of at the time. You know, some shit all the way back from season 1. Anyway, chances are, though, it being a live service game, people are gonna probably drop off it. Maybe you might wonder, are there even going to be enough people to actually play a game? It's bots. There's always bots for Exoprimal. Um, yeah, July 2023. It is. It's pretty much a year since it launched. I don't think it ever really caught on. I don't think it had a real identity, I guess. It's kind of a 5v5, but it's a PvPvE thing. But it's also PvE. Like, you are competing against another squad, but I don't think you ever directly fight the other squad. It's kind of like a meta game between the two of you. So it was kind of a strange one, and I think the clash between the robots and the dinosaurs just seemed funny, but I don't think it ever really played out well enough. I don't know. I don't know. It never really seemed to catch on. I would have much have preferred this as a Monster Hunter sci-fi thing. You know, like, Monster Hunter is technically a live service, I guess, but not really? I don't know. Like, it has live service elements to it, but it's really, they're more of an aside, really. Monster Hunter is a monster hunting game. It doesn't really fit into its own genre, I guess. But they could have made it a genre by just doing this, but okay, you're still hunting dinosaurs or whatever, but you're a robot guy instead. Anyway, this is kind of the way a lot of live service games are going to go eventually. Like Fortnite, as super popular as it is right now, it's having to reinvent itself a lot. You know, there's a lot of different products now for Fortnite. You do have the build-only stuff, you have the Battle Royale-only stuff, you've the Lego stuff going on now, there's a rhythm game thing as well. Like, they're very much branching out because they know that the main game will eventually start to lose people. You know, people will get bored of it eventually. Are they bringing in enough people at a time right now? Yeah, probably. But it's definitely not hitting the numbers it used to, and it's not making the money it used to, which is why there's all this diversification. But eventually, they're all going to have to come down to the same conclusion that, you know, you are going to have to wind the game down eventually. And then how do you handle that? Like, there's no mention here for Exoprimal when exactly the servers are going to stop. Will they ever stop? I mean, if they have bots, technically the game can still run forever. But yeah, it's not mentioned. And I don't think a lot of the services, game services, live services have a plan for sunsetting their games. You know, like Bungie, how are they going to ever sunset Destiny? Because they've never had the entirety of the game's content available ever since they started deleting parts of the game. I don't think they've ever had the entire game content package available for somebody to play all at once. You know, MMOs, they kind of get away with it, but at the same time, if the servers ever go down on an MMO, you can't play the game anymore. There's no offline version of World of Warcraft, you know? Anyway, it's something to think about, but I don't think I don't see EA, the likes of EA or the likes of Activision, making their games available offline. You know, they tend to just delist them from the store. Speaking of, we'll be talking about that later. Anyway, moving on. This is meant to be the update section. This is meant to be where we don't talk about the industry bullshit. Anyway, Menavor ReFantasio has a story trailer out now. It's long enough, I suppose, for a trailer. Focusing in on the main plot of the game, as opposed to what we've seen mostly up until now have been just small snippets and then a lot of gameplay. Whereas now they're leaning all in on the actual story. That's probably because the voice acting is done now, and they're able to actually cut a trailer that shows off the story. It's pretty high concept stuff. This is kind of typical of Atlus's stuff, other than Persona. Like the Shin Megami Tensei series is pretty high concept. It still looks amazing, though. God, I can't wait to play this game. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the spoilers or whatever, even though it is a trailer and technically it's advertising and should be spoiling it, but whatever. It's some shenanigans. I'll just leave it at that. check it out yourselves. Moving on, Parasite Eve inspired cyberpunk game announced. Looks cool as hell. So yeah, this is a game called .45 or 45 caliber. I'm not sure how they want to pronounce that. I'm gonna say 45 caliber. 45 caliber Parabellum Bloodhound. It's a hell of a name, and it's actually longer than that. It's 45 caliber Parabellum Bloodhound Cyberpunk Active Time Action. Incredible. This is from the same developer behind Valhalla, Cyberpunk Bartender Action. So what's really standing out to me is that it is Parasite Eve. It's just Parasite Eve, and I'm like, yes, more of that, please, because nobody is doing Parasite Eve right now, and Square Enix certainly aren't doing it. And with their new policy to not make anything risky whatsoever, they're not going to be making a Parasite Eve again anytime soon. So yeah, please, more of that. There's some more at the main page for the game, but it's a good while off. It's not going to be out anytime soon. There's no release date. There's no planned release date, release window, anything like that. But yeah, it looks really good, and I really want to play it. And it would be great if Kotaku would stop trying to spoil me on Final Fantasy VII. Anyway, free Epic game this week, The Falconeer. Not entirely sure what this game is about. Soar through the skies aboard a majestic warbird, explore a stunning oceanic world, and engage in epic aerial dogfights in this BAFTA. Okay, so it's a dogfighting game. It's a dogfighting game, but you're a bird, so it's a bird fighting game, I guess. It looks pretty, I will give them that. Anyway, that's your free game on Epic this week. It's the start of the month, so monthly games. We already had the PlayStation Plus monthly games last week, which will be out this week, or potentially are already out. Game Pass. So we're looking at Cricket 24. Great. Flock, which is launching directly into Game Pass. It's a game about collecting a bunch of tiny little guys who follow you around. It's mostly a fairly chill game. Journey to the Savage Planet is a twin stick shooter, I think. I'm not entirely sure on that one. Magical Delicacy also launching directly into Game Pass. It's also coming to Switch. It's a kind of cooking game / Metroidvania type thing. Neon White has been available on pretty much everything except Xbox up until now, so now it is making its debut on Xbox. Neon White is a speedrunning sim. Something like that. It's very good. It's a first-person game that is kind of like, as I said, it's like a speedrunning kind of thing. You're given various abilities to try to get to the level as fast as possible, and that's kind of what you're going for. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. Super Smash Bros, but it's Nickelodeon characters. Case of the Golden Idol we played on the channel last year. It's a very, maybe it might have been earlier this year actually. It's a very good puzzle game. It's kind of like a Mad Libs puzzle thing. Very good. Definitely encourage you to check that out. Chia, I think this is a debut also for Xbox and also for Game Pass. We played it as part of my Fully Plays Games a Bit series on the channel. It's got this interesting body hopping mechanic where you can jump into different animals and different inanimate objects in the game world and kind of move around and use them. The animate objects aren't super interesting unless you jump into like a lantern or like a kerosene thing and whatever they're called, canister, and launch yourself into like a fire pit or something and explode. Like that kind of stuff is funny. But jumping into like a fish, swimming, bring yourself closer to the shore, jump out of the fish, jump into a bird, fly across up the mountain, and jump down into like a deer or something like that. That kind of stuff it's really fun, and it's got a really cool traversal mechanic to it. So, who was I wrong about? Journey to the Savage Planet, making a return to Game Pass. It's already been there. Filled with danger, to explore, fight, jump, scout. Oh, it's a survival thing. And explode your way across an adventure? Okay, maybe not. Fight, jump, scavenge, craft. Sounds like survival, but I don't think it is. I think it's more of an action-y type game. Magical Delicacy even. Wholesome pixel art platformer. Cook magical delicacy, form a vast collection of ingredients in your own shop, explore an unfamiliar town, and deliver tasty treats to the townsfolk. There are new ways to traverse, discover secrets, and experience the ego. So that's where the That's where the Metroidvania part comes in. Block multiplayer co-op game about the joy of flight and collecting adorable flying creatures with your friends. It's kind of it. It's like an explore 'em up thing. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, you can play Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail, assuming you are up to date with all of your Final Fantasy XIV shenanigans. I'm not going to look at the screen because I don't want to be spoiled. Anyway, Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail is kind of not a reset exactly, but it's kind of the start of a new storyline. Or might actually be more specific to say it's a break before they start a new storyline kind of thing. It's sort of like the summer holiday episode, if you like, for Final Fantasy XIV. Because they've had a fairly long running arc all the way up till now. And I think Dawn Trail is largely seen as a holiday break for the main character from all of those trials. Not that there aren't going to be, you know, difficult encounters or what have you. It's still a Final Fantasy game. But I believe that's kind of the gist of it. Not looking too much into it myself because we are going to play this eventually. But this release of a new expansion does definitely mean that when I do eventually get to Final Fantasy XIV in part of my Final Fantasy series playthrough, it's now gotten like 40 hours longer. So that's good. I'm glad that happened. Anyway, continuing not to look at the screen. Now I can look at the screen. Alright. It's another one of those Hoyoverse things that only I care about. But anyway, Zenless Zone Zero was released this week. It's another Hoyoverse free-to-play thing. Free-to-play gachapon thing. So like Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail, that kind of thing. What's a little different about Zenless Zone Zero, it's a smaller game, so it's not as big as like Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact, very big open world. Zenless is not really that kind of thing. It's focusing a lot more on action, arena-style combat, that kind of thing. God, feet on Twitch. What are you doing to me? You're gonna get me banned. This is also kind of debuting their new animation tech. As you can see, everybody is very fluid. Lots of movement, lots of secondary movements and animations and stuff like that. There's a lot going on. Jiggle physics too. Anyway, I like these games. We're gonna see what this one's like this week. We'll see if Hoyoverse is third time lucky as well. And then last, possibly least, I don't know. Who knows? Probably not. So this is the Legend of Heroes series. It has never been outside of Japan, as far as I'm aware, or outside of Asia at least. So I don't think it's ever made its way to the US or to the EU. It is a JRPG series. This particular one is Trials Through Daybreak. It is their most recent release in Japan. And it is getting a sequel later this year in Japan. When it actually ends up being localized, who knows? Anyway, so it is fully localized, fully voice acting English and what have you. It's a JRPG series I've never played before, which is kind of where I'm actually most interested in, because I have played a lot of them. I can't say I've played all of them, but I have played a lot. So a new one will certainly be interesting to me. And from what I have seen of people talking about it when it came out in Japan, it seemed like it was pretty hype. It is reminding me a lot of the Tales games. Tales of Exilia specifically, because of its futuristic aspect to it. Or not futuristic, but more like modern day aspect to it. Anyway, we'll see how it plays out, but it does look a lot like Tales right now. Even though it's not Tales, it's Trails. Different. It's a whole extra letter in there. Anyway, moving on. It's also not spelled that way. Moving on. Unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games. Video game industry. So, ex-Rockstar dev tells everybody what we already kind of assumed, was that as soon as GTA Online made a lot of money, they basically ignored the story of GTA 5. Yeah, I think a lot of people already assumed that was the case, but here we go. Joseph Rubino, former cinematics editor for Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto 5, suggests the game's planned story DLC was scrapped in favor of Grand Theft Auto Online, becoming such a gargantuan hit for Rockstar. Which should be obvious, really, because they've done fuck all with GTA 5 specifically. All they've done is modernize it so that they can make GTA Online modern for PS4, for PS5. That's why it's managed to make its way. That's why there's been a GTA 5 release on PS3, PS4, and PS5. That's the only reason. It's so GTA Online could get a glow up. Anyway, GTA 5's multiplayer release marked a shift in Rockstar's hopes for an open world game. It basically became Rockstar's cash cow, as you're probably well aware. That's kind of all Rockstar does these days. Somehow they managed to fit Red Dead Redemption 2 in there at one point, but then promptly forgot about Red Dead Online and just moved straight on into GTA Online instead. I think looking back now, I would say that you could probably have done both, i.e. do the story DLC and the online stuff, but that was a business decision that they made, of course, because the creatives don't get to make any decisions at these creative industries. Why would you let them make any decisions? Anyway, he did say that he was quite upset about it, but a lot of the stuff that he did work on for the story DLC was eventually incorporated into GTA Online, so he doesn't feel like they wasted it, but still, he would have preferred if it, if they had gone ahead with the story DLC, of course, because it was work he had done on it. As GTA 5 has changed consoles over the last 11 years, the multiplayer has been its one constant. It's basically no real change. And it's kind of pointed out here in the editorial or opinion piece by Justin Carter here that it's kind of supporting the stuff that Naughty Dog was worried about if they had gone into, a Last of Us live service online thing. So it has been scrapped, but their worry was that they would just become a live service developer. That would just take up all of their time, and that's kind of what's happened to Rockstar. They did have to bulk up for GTA 6. They did have to hire a lot of people for GTA 6. And enforce a return to office for some reason. Not sure why that was important, but anyway. It was felt by Naughty Dog that they would suffer the same fate. That eventually they wouldn't be working on their stuff that they were known for. They'd instead have to just spend all of their time working on whatever The Last of Us Online is, and it does seem like that's what's happening with Rockstar as well. Rockstar has effectively become a full-time live service studio. Yes, it has. We'll see. I mean, obviously we have to wait to see how GTA 6 turned out. Red Dead Redemption 2 was released while GTA Online was a thing. GTA Online was quite mature at that point as well, so they can do it. I don't feel like they won't be able to do it. I'm sure GTA 6 will be good. Probably focusing way too much on things that people won't even notice, but anyway, moving on. Speaking of too much money, is the first Descendants monetization actually as bad as everyone is saying? Yes. Yes, it is. Anyway, normally when you ask a question in a headline, the answer is no. Usually. Not this time. It's yes. Okay, so the first Descendant is out. It is a Warframe clone in a lot of ways. So it's an online live service shooter looter thing. As it makes its way up the most played charts, players are starting to lodge complaints about the free-to-play game's monetization, especially in relation to its competitor Warframe. It's not a favorable comparison. So this has mostly comes down to the game's gear system. So if you haven't played kind of online shooter stuff, a lot of the ways they gate content is you need to have your gear has a gear quality or a gear number attached to it, and the total gear number of your character is everything that they're wearing. Right? It's everything you have equipped, all your weapons equipped, your armor equipped, whatever it is. That has a number associated with it, and if your number is higher than, you must be this high to ride this ride, kind of thing. If your number is higher than whatever the set number is for that content, you can play it. If it isn't, you can't, or you'll struggle very hard with it. So that's kind of the way they gate it here in the first Descendant. It's the same thing. Warframe, I believe, did the same thing as well. And the way you improve that is these things called energy activators in game. But what it basically does is it increases how many mods you can attach to your character, how many item slots they have, kind of thing. Which means you can make your number bigger, right? That's the kind of thing. So in the in-game store, it costs 1,500 premium currency, but it's called Caliber in-game, but premium thing. Premium currency meaning actual money, not fake video game money, like real money. To increase your chosen weapon or descendant's mod capacity, this is very important as mods are what provides much of the power, survivability, and overall strength of your equipment. So it's the number, the gear number. However, in pretty typical live service free-to-play shit, just getting 1500 caliber, that's not... You can't just get 1500 caliber. Oh no. No. 1500 caliber will cost you quite the sum. Right now, you can't even buy that much directly. Of course not. Why would they ever give you a direct one-to-one thing? No, that's not how they make. That's not how they get you. You have to instead buy 1060 for $20, or 520 for $10. Again, you would have to buy both of them combined, and you'd still have more than you actually needed. Or, hey, you might get a discount if you go for $50 and get 2,750 caliber, which again isn't enough for 2 of these energy activators. It's enough for 1 and almost enough for second one. So close. Hey, why don't you buy another pack? That's how they get you. So if you wanted to buy, 4 in total for your 2 guns, your 2 equipment slots, or whatever, that's 6,000 calibers worth. Cost you about $100. $100. That's a lot. Now compare that. You might want to wonder, how does that compare to its direct competitor, Warframe? Warframe has the same thing. In their game, they're called Orkin catalysts, or reactors. They sell for platinum, which again is Warframe's premium currency. It's the currency you actually have to spend money on. Each one of those costs 20 platinum. However, the price for it is, you can't buy 20 platinum, so they're still the same on that. However, you can buy 75 platinum, and that sells for $5. $5 will get you 3 of these things. $30 will get you 1 of these things in First Descendant. $50 will get you almost 2. $50 will get you almost 2, or $5 will get you almost 4 in Warframe. And as pointed out by the author here, Connor McCarr, when he logged into Warframe, he got a 50% discount as well. So clearly one of them has a little bit more value for your money than the other. These are not mere cosmetics or fancy skins or whatever. They are like directly required link to your player power. Is there a way to get these in game? Yes. However, it is an extremely rare drop from very specific missions. It's not something you're going to come across easily. You're talking a lot of grinding, or pay $100. I hope you really like the game. Anyway, this is why people are fatigued with these type of games. This is the exact reason. Would people have had as much of an issue with it if it was $50 but you didn't have to do any of this shit? You would just naturally accrue enough loot that you would eventually get there. Just standard playthrough. Diablo. Old Diablo style. I don't know how Diablo 4 handles it now, but Diablo 2 or 3, whatever. Defeating enemies, they drop loot. The loot is typically tied to your level. And then there's a swing if it's a little bit lower than your level or a little bit higher than your level. So you get stuff that's higher than your level, and he's like, oh, cool. It pushes me up, and so on. You get better equipment. This game, it looks like it's not really the case. You get a very rare chance of it increasing your mod capacity so that you can push your number up. Anyway... Speaking of shitty company policies, I guess? I don't know. Anyway, Tribunal finds... I thought I took this article out, to be honest. Tribunal finds Cloud Imperium Games discriminated against disabled employee with return to office policy. I kind of took this... I was thinking of taking this out mostly because it doesn't really necessarily relate to video games so much as it just relates to just being a shitty employer, but I kind of kept it in. I remember now why I kept it in, actually. Anyway... So Cloud Imperium Games are the people behind Star Citizen, aka the game that isn't out yet, but has somehow made hundreds of millions of dollars. Anyway, they've been forced to now pay £30,000, so UK money, because they're a UK-based company, which is around $40,000, in compensation for discriminating against a disabled worker. So this is a suit taken up by senior programmer Paul Athion and the claimant. This is about a return to office policy that failed to accommodate his needs as a disabled person. He was hired by Cloud Imperium Games 2018, so this is pre-pandemic. This will be important later. Pre-pandemic, made the company aware of his disability at the beginning of his tenure. Studio at the time was located in Wilmslow, which is somewhere in the UK. No idea. Sounds like England. Probably is England. Anyway, as with a lot of companies at the time, pretty much every company at the time, when the pandemic hit, everybody started working from home. Cloud Imperium Games were no different. During that time, the studio opened a new office in Manchester and sought to relocate its entire workforce there instead. Of course, during the pandemic, people would have gotten used to the work from home stuff. As his disabilities, obviously, it made a job way easier for him to do it at home, and then also he would have had to relocate in the first place. To move from Wilmslow to Manchester, this is a big ordeal anyway, in general, and it's obviously going to be a much bigger ordeal for somebody with kind of disabilities. So rather than move to the Manchester office, the claimant asked Cloud Imperium Games for a permanent remote working arrangement. Instead, the request was swiftly denied with no follow-up whatsoever. This, again, will also be a problem. The reason I kept it in, actually, was because Cloud Imperium Games branded itself as a startup enterprise, because they're still trying to pull this shit. Oh, we technically haven't released our product yet, even though we've made a couple of 100 million and we have close to 500 employees. We're still a startup, guys. Fuck off. Anyway, they attempted to argue the claimant had suffered from performance issues. So they were trying to say that, hey, your work is suffering because of your remote working. That's why we need you back in the office. Claiming that they were unable to meet certain job criterias, mentoring staff, which what have you, because they were working remotely. However, there was no specific issue with the claimant's performance in relation to working from home as opposed to his performance generally. Nothing was ever found about that. There was no documentation around it. It was in fact discovered that they only started checking his performance after he made the claim. A witness for Cloud Imperium Games stated the company was taking a tougher stance on working from home, but despite the alleged issues with the claimant's performance, never formally asked him to return to the office. So they just kept it in limbo. They never actually formally required him to come back, but they still tried to let him go. The tribunal finds that the respondent's concern about the claimant's performance seemed rather retrospective in the sense that whilst the claimant was employed, the respondent never formally investigated those concerns, so they just randomly said your performance was lacking. They never actually investigated it. That's a problem, guys. That's a problem. Anyway, Cloud Imperium Games could have made a reasonable adjustment, and in refusing to do so, this was thought to be discriminatory and disproportionate treatment, aka something you're not allowed to do. We find that the respondent has treated the claimant unfavorably because of something arising in consequence of his disability. So, £30,000, please. Athion, the claimant at the time, said he was shocked to see how ready Cloud Imperium Games management were to ignore my disability and gaslight me about my work. So they just were saying his performance was down, even though they had nothing to back that up. They just kept telling him that. That's why you have to come back in. It was clear to me from the start that Cloud Imperium Games didn't want people to work from home after the expense of their new Manchester office. It's the real reason why they wanted to make up the money on that, and worked backwards from that to retroactively conjure up reasons why my request should be denied, something they continued to do right up until the final tribunal hearing, all while ignoring disability legislation. It was gratifying that the tribunal saw through them as easily as they did. And then the rest of that is just mostly talking about how Star Citizen still isn't out yet. Anyway, it's good. It's both good and bad. I mean, they won it, but how long were they put through that? How long did they have to listen to their employer tell them that they're not doing a good enough job? Anyway. Alright. Speaking of other people not making... Hang on. My segues are terrible this week. I have these in the wrong order, that's why. Alright, anyway, we're gonna move on. Co-development studio Toze reports losses due to multiple cancelled games. So, Toze, you may not be familiar with because they're typically not named when they do development work for companies. That's kind of their deal. They're like a white label developer. But they have made a lot of games for both Nintendo and Square Enix. So most recent ones you might be aware of: Paper Mario Thousand Year Door remake, Final Fantasy Pixel remasters that we're playing through on the channel, Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII Reunion that we will be playing through on the channel, Scarlet Nexus, which is an amazing action RPG, WarioWare Move It. Don't know how that's been received, but I assume well. And Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince, which is the latest Dragon Quest but Pokemon game. Anyway, they make a lot of stuff. And I believe they were involved in some of the Nier remake. I think was them as well. I think they did Final Fantasy Theatrhythm. They've done a lot. Point is, anyway, specializes in working with other publishers and developers. Their whole deal is that they're a ghost developer. They come in, they support you, they help out, / do all of the development work, and you pretty much take all the credit. That's kind of how they operate. As such, it's practically impossible to create a full list of Toze developed games. They're going all the way back to like 1980 something. 80s and 90s, you probably won't have heard of any of them. So many of them made no mention of the company at all in the 80s and 90s, and then up to the modern day, they're a little bit better at it now. Anyway, unfortunately, though, multiple projects it had been working on have now been cancelled due to its clients' policy changes. So recently, and as is pointed out here, frequent collaborator Square Enix has had a huge policy change that they are basically not taking risks anymore. They're just going to focus on their core franchises and just focus on the prestige AAA shit, which is what Sony's been doing. We've seen how that's been working out for Sony. And now Square Enix are going to do the same thing. And this is obviously going to hit Toze because Square Enix was obviously a big partner with them. There's half of the games mentioned there were Square Enix games. That's not great because it just means the variety of game goes down. You know, everyone's going all in on either the big AAA stuff or we're left with the indie kind of thing. The middle market is just disappearing. And that's where a lot of the innovation, the most of the innovation happens in the indie side of things. But the middle ground is kind of where you're meant to make interesting ideas that filter into the AAA space. Because AAA doesn't take risks, really. It only goes with stuff that's already proven. It's disappointing. Anyway, hopefully they can get some work done from Nintendo at least. Might make up for it. So, talking about games here that are successful, critically well reviewed, well received by the community, still doesn't make enough money to keep the studio open. Certain Studios cuts jobs months after the launch of debut title, Tales of Kanzera Zao. So this is also a game that launched into Game Pass. So they did get like a lump sum thing. So the question then is was it worth it for them to launch into Game Pass? Could they have made more money standalone? Was the money Microsoft gave them for it, paid them for it, clearly is not enough. Or were they banking on sales on PlayStation and PC that didn't come through? Would it have made sense to launch a PlayStation Plus? I think it did launch a PlayStation Plus, actually, as well. So they would have got that lump sum from Sony. They would have known that already, right? That number is known, what they were going to get. So what were they banking on? You know, what was the other guaranteed money that they felt they were going to get? It was like additional PC sales. I'm not sure if it came out on Switch. Anyway, 3 months after its release, Tales of Kanzera Zao, it had been up until now original story. It was kind of like rumors, seen stuff on LinkedIn. The level designer made a mention that he was being let go. One of the producers had made a mention they were being let go. It was then eventually formally announced Certain Studios joined the growing number of game studios impacted by layoffs this year. Impacted by layoffs makes it sound like, and like a lot of companies have this line or this similar line to it, that we've suffered layoffs, been impacted by layoffs, whatever. This is a decision you took. This is not a natural disaster. You're not impacted by a hurricane. Oh, sorry. You are impacted by a hurricane. You do suffer the effects of an earthquake or whatever. There's nothing you can do about them. You voluntarily chose layoffs. Pay cuts are also an option. You know? They're not great options. Neither of these options are particularly amazing. And it's also still not clear, why exactly they needed these layoffs, because they launched into Game Pass, which means Microsoft would have paid them. Then I don't know if there's an additional deal for how many downloads they get, possibly. PlayStation Plus, they launched into that as well, which means Sony paid them. So those are lump sums. They're well aware what that is. That's agreed before time. And then they would have whatever sales they would get, PC, or maybe people who like the game enough that they wanted to buy it and not have to worry about it disappearing from their subscription service or something like that. I do that sometimes myself. Maybe. Who knows? You'll be wondering if they'd be getting like PC sales as well for people who don't have PC Game Pass. Or maybe it wasn't part of PC Game Pass. Who knows? I can't imagine that they were banking so much on those sales, that those additional sales required to keep those people keep their jobs. Like, there's something missing in that story. It's either that, or it's the case that, I don't know, they didn't get the money from Sony and Microsoft, or it was like it's not like a lump sum, it comes in like waves. You get like 20% now, you get 20% next month, you get 20% the next month after that, or something like that. I don't know. We don't know what the deals are like, necessarily, for Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. Okay, continuing with the layoffs, and again, another set of layoffs that don't really make a ton of sense. Ubisoft lays off dozens at Toronto studio. So Ubisoft Toronto are one of the teams. If you're not familiar with how Ubisoft does development, they basically split the project across multiple studios so that the game is always being worked on, more or less. So they push it across the globe, every time zone, 24 hours the game is being worked on, more or less, kind of thing. So Ubisoft Toronto were in partnership with Ubisoft Montreal and in partnership with Ubisoft somewhere in Europe and somewhere else, are working on the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake. However, 33 team members will be leaving Ubisoft, is how they put it. This makes it sound like the 33 team members decided to just leave the company, not that they were laid off. That's not how they're making it sound, but that is what happened. Last month, Ubisoft claimed excellent progress was being made on Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. So much excellent progress that 33 team members had to be laid off. What's that about? Ubisoft Toronto has decided the entirety of Ubisoft Toronto. I'm sure, yes, the whole company got together and decided this. To conduct a targeted realignment to ensure it can deliver on its ambitious roadmap. Yes, we're going to realign so that we can ensure we can deliver on our ambitious roadmap, aka finish the game, by laying off 33 people, because that will make the game development go faster. Or not go faster, just go in general. Does that make sense? Losing people, yeah, that's definitely gonna be good. It's definitely gonna be good for development and morale. Not adding people. No, losing people. That'll do it. So yeah, like, this is a short arc, because you see we don't have a ton of information about it. Ubisoft Toronto are also the people behind the latest Far Cry's, 5 and 6. Watch Dogs Legion, which didn't do great, even though it was... I think it was critically well received, but I don't think players enjoyed it that much. And then the Splinter Cell remake, that's still not entirely sure what's going on with that. I think they do have some involvement in the Beyond Good and 2. Sorry, Beyond Good and 2. Beyond Good and Evil 2. Beyond Good and 2, Evil. Wait. Anyway. Yeah. Not sure what's going on there with Ubisoft Toronto. Anyway. Moving on, some community things. Summer Games Done Quick is currently, if you're watching this live, is currently still going. But we'll be wrapping up today. Summer Games Done Quick is a charity drive event by the Games Done Quick team, which is a speedrunning initiative. And right now they're raising money for Medicine Sans Frontier, which is something they typically do every summer. And there's one that happens in the spring, winter. Awesome Games Done Quick, which is usually for cancer research, I think. Anyway, there were lots of really cool moments, lots of really cool speed runs. Obviously, the biggest notable event, God, my brain is not working today, was the dog who hit a home run. So, Peanut Butter the dog has done this before. I'm not sure if it was last year's Summer Games or it might have been Awesome Games this year, where they did a speed run of another game. It's a fairly slow running game. It did require a little gyromite, was what it was called. It's a fairly slow paced game. Anybody could really play it. It was not particularly a good game, but getting a dog to play the game well and not make mistakes and so on is obviously very difficult. But they pulled it off. It was really impressive. That was done remote. So the dog was on the webcam. It was a comfortable place. It was at home and so on. This was done like on stage with a big crowd, and he was still managed to, get the dog to keep its composure, get the dog to hit timing. The timing to hit the baseball in the game is not easy. You need to get the dog to be like, okay, press button, and then the length of time it takes for you to say press the button, the dog to understand what the command is, and then actually hit a button. That's incredible. And like they did make some misses and so on, but very impressive that like the last shot is an incredible home run. The dog is just incredible. There were also some really other cool moments during Summer Games Done Quick. There was an Alan Wake 2 speed run where the crowd got in on the dance routine that happens during Alan Wake 2. That was really cool. I'd encourage you to give it a shot, give it a look, the whole event. Just pick out some of the games that you like. You don't have to watch the whole thing. I mean, you should watch the whole thing, but obviously you don't have to. Anyway, I'm going to leave... I guess we'll leave Dawn Trail because it's probably the biggest release. But I'm just not going to look at it. We'll leave Dawn Trail play in the background. And I got to loop it as well. It already is looping. Okay. Buttons. Right. Anyway, that is your news for the 1st to the 7th of July, 2024. So some stuff there from Capcom. Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster Deluxe Edition. This continues Capcom's sort of... like, they refresh their stuff a lot, but the things they choose to refresh is always kind of strange. Like, why Dead Rising? Why now? Why not Okami? Why not Onimusha? Why not the games I want to play, goddammit? Why not Dino Crisis? And so on. Anyway, I'm sure it'll appeal to some people. Getting it out of the PS3 minds, I suppose, is good. Because I don't think there's a Dead Rising available on PS4, PS5 right now. It is on PC, and then Xbox is backwards compatible all the way up to the 360, so it'll be available there as well. It's not clear now if the Dead Rising PC version, PC port, is just getting an update, or if it'll be a actual... what's the word? Words. A full release kind of thing. Anyway, I guess we'll find out. Kunitsugami, I still need to play the demo. I'm going to play that today. Check it out myself. For what I've seen, it seems okay. Seems fine. I'm not sure how interesting I'll find it exactly. I just don't like time in games. I don't like being under pressure, timing-wise. I've never enjoyed it, ever. This is also a reason I don't particularly like Dead Rising for the same issue. Somebody presented it to me as an idea that just think of Dead Rising as a roguelite instead. And just pretend it's a roguelike. Pretend it's a really long roguelike. So when you do inevitably not get everything done within the 3 days, you just go back to the start. But you have improved stats and items and you know what's happening and that kind of stuff. Like Majora's Mask, in a way, is kind of like that as well. I guess it's just, you need to think of it as a different way and just don't look at the clock. Just don't think about it. It's hard. It's hard to not think about it. Anyway, Say Kunitsugami has its free demo. I'm gonna check that out later. Exoprimal stopping its seasonal, not stopping its seasonal stuff, but not making any new seasonal stuff. To be honest, I kind of feel like that is the way to do those kind of games that I've mentioned. Not just putting out constantly new stuff all the time, because it locks your studio into just doing this. This is just the game you make now. Like, you can't make a new game because you're having to dedicate so much time, so many people to supporting this live service game that you don't really have the space to make a new one. We see with Rockstar, GTA Online has taken up so much of their time that they have to massively bulk up the team for GTA 6 to make space for it. How they did it with Red Dead Redemption 2, I assume it was the same. I was not really paying attention to the development cycle at the time, but I imagine it was the same because Rockstar does that a lot. And they're not the only one. They're like a lot of studios. They ramp up when the game is getting ready to be made, get the game made, fire everybody. It's a very shitty way that the game industry deals with its talent, but that is how things typically work. The idea with downloadable content in general was so that they could keep those people around. You know, they'd have stuff to work on before they start working again on their next game. You could work on DLC for a bit, you know, while the creative side of the team would be working away on whatever the sequel is going to be, or whatever a big expansion was going to be, or something like that. That was the idea. And then they stopped doing the second bit, and they just said, hey, let's just keep doing the DLC forever instead. I mean, it's fine, I guess, but you're gonna fatigue people eventually. They're not gonna just constantly be wanting that kind of, like, it. There are obviously going to be diehards, people who are playing Fortnite forever, people who play GTA Online forever, people who play World of Warcraft forever, you know. It's just their game. It's hit them really well. Ticks all their boxes. They have no reason to play anything else. Great. Not everybody's like that. No, you do lose people eventually. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm just going to move on. I know where I'm going with that. Game Pass. Game Pass this week's, or this month's, pretty good. I mean, a lot of the games on it I've already played. Or a lot of the games I'd be interested in, I suppose. Neon White, if you haven't played it yet, is probably the big standout. Because Neon White's excellent. Very good game. Magical Delicacy, I am actually interested to check out myself, but it's specifically not coming to PlayStation. It's on everything else. So I assume there's some kind of console exclusivity window there. I'll probably have to grab it on PC instead. Anyway, we'll check it out later. Other industry news. Again, with some mysterious layoffs now. Now we have ones that are just nakedly about capitalism. But at least they had the excuse that, oh, it's difficult for everybody now, kind of thing. Oh, we're not making all of the money anymore, kind of thing. Surgeon Studios one, it just doesn't make sense. They got a lump sum from Microsoft, from Sony. They knew how much that was going to be. So they either knew these layoffs were coming, that they knew they weren't going to have enough money, and were hoping for it, or something else. I can't think of what else it would be. They were just stuck their head in the sand and were hoping sales would be enough. And then the Ubisoft Toronto one, again, doesn't make sense. They are supposed to be ramping up their team for Sands of Time. And instead, they're letting people go. So, I don't know what the deal is there. We do know the Sands of Time remake has been in development hell for years. So, this could just be yet another circle of development hell for Sands of Time remake. Who knows? Summer Games Done Quick has been a pretty good bright spot this week. Some really fun, just video game community things happening there, and obviously watching a dog hit a home run is hilarious. Anyway, what's happening on the channel next week? Well, to be honest, not a lot happened on the channel this week either, but anyway, we'll move on to it. So here's our big wall of cards, or big wall of games. The game card of 2024. This hasn't changed since last week. So still currently in progress, still Wakes the Deep, Final Fantasy V, Resident Evil 5, and yeah, Monster Hunter, sure. We'll still entertain the idea that Monster Hunter is still going. I need to get back to it, I really do. And I really want to, but there's so many other games that are taking up my time. Games like V Rising, So I'm still playing V Rising off stream. I am just into Act 3. So people who've played it before, I've just made my way into Act 3. Yeah, it's really just got me. It's just got me by the fangs. It's sunk its fangs into me, I think is what I wanted to say. It's got me by the fangs. I go. I've hit a little bit of a roadblock now in that a lot of the bosses I'm facing are actually kind of difficult. I feel like I mentioned this last week that I feel like some of the bosses are tuned with the assumption that you'll have, why did their castles look so good? My castle looks like shit. Their castles look so great. Anyway, I feel like they're tuned for more than one person. The assumption that you'd be doing this co-op, which I'm very much not. I'm doing everything solo. I do have a cool horse now, like that horse. I do have that. That's pretty fun. That was one of my latest unlocks. We're getting new equipment, and I'm starting to do a bit of the end game. It's like very early in that sense. Like it's mostly just giving you an idea of what it's like instead of the full end game kind of thing. Anyway, I'm enjoying it, but it is taking up a lot of my time. That's not exactly the reason you didn't see a lot of streams this week, but it's part of it. The other reason is just, I don't know, I'm not having a great time mental health wise, to be perfectly honest. Anyway, moving on. This week, as I mentioned during the new releases section, Zenless Zone Zero is released. It's another Hoyoverse thing that only I care about. We are going to play it on the channel for a little bit, same as we did for Genshin Impact, same as we did for Honkai Star Rail. So we'll do the same thing here. We'll see what the what the monetization aspect is like, what the gachapon stuff is like. From what I've heard, it's not as bad, because I think they kind of want Zenless to be a smaller game. They don't want it to be as big as Genshin Impact or as big as Honkai Star Rail. And that seems to be the way they've been going since Genshin. I think they kind of have the idea that Genshin is enormous as a game, and they don't want 3 of those. Honkai has been a little more streamlined, and I think Zenless they're probably going to go even further with it. But if that's the case, then you have to worry, is it too streamlined? Is there enough content? So we'll find out, because we'll play it later this week, or next week, whatever way you want to look at it. So the schedule for next week is as follows. Tuesday, Final Fantasy V, part of my Foley Plays the Final Fantasy series. Wednesday, Still Wakes the Deep, as part of my Foley Fable series. Foley Fable series is where we focus on games that have a strong narrative component. Thursday, Zenless Zone Zero, part of my Foley Plays Games a Bit series, just where we play the opening hours of newly released titles. No stream on Friday. I will probably be playing D&D with friends, so I won't be around to stream. And then Saturday, Resident Evil 5. We'll eventually get back to it as part of my Foley Plays Resident Evil series. So what you've probably seen there is a lot of part of my series kind of thing, and that's kind of where I'm getting a bit of fatigue. I want to play something new. And I know Still Wakes the Deep is nearly finished. But I kind of want something big. Like, I want a big Let's Play. But I also want to finish out these series. And the thing is, the Final Fantasy one is nowhere close to being finished. Not even remotely. Resident Evil, you could argue we're close enough to it. Resi 5, Resi 6... the 2 Revelations, Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil Life Beyond, and maybe we're not that close to it. We're much closer to finishing the Resident Evil one than we are to the Final Fantasy one, though. Anyway, that's where I'm getting the kind of fatigue. I come home. I finish work, I move on to stream, and I just think, that's kind of where I'm at. That's why you didn't see many streams from me last week or the week before. I'm trying to work on that, and I'm trying to get my head back into it, get the motivation for it. It's hard. Basically, that's where I'm at. Anyway, that is the proposed schedule for this week. Really hoping I can stick to it this time. Anyway, that's it from me for today. Hopefully I'll see you Tuesday for Final Fantasy V. Hopefully you'll see me on Tuesday for Final Fantasy V. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.